Today we're going to discuss about the presidential proclamation suspending travel from India. We also have some good news for the biometrics, suspending the biometrics for the H4 and L and E dependents. We're going to discuss about what Biden is trying to revamp the entire immigration systems. We're going to discuss about the problems that still persist, even though President Biden is making some progress, but there are still many problems in the USCIS. We're going to discuss all those things. Emily, the biggest thing that came out was that the proclamation that came from President Biden banning people coming from India. We were expecting it because of the COVID situation. Can you explain in summary what kind of things that he banned? And then I'm going to ask you questions, and if you can answer those things.
Right. So this particular travel ban is directed at non-immigrants. So that's anyone on a temporary work visa, visitors, anyone besides permanent residents and citizens. Now, there are some specific exceptions from the travel ban. For instance, if you have a U.S. citizen child, the parent of that child would still be eligible to travel to the U.S., as well as the siblings of that U.S. citizen child, for example. But most of our, H-1B, L-1 audience, if they're currently outside the U.S. and we're awaiting their visa interview appointment for all this time, unfortunately, very few people will be eligible to receive the visa and come into the U.S.
So if, for example, an H-1B person or L-1 or H-4 person has a U.S. citizen child who is not married and who is under 21 years old, they are allowed to travel right now. Is that right, Emily?
Correct, if they have the visa.
If they have the visa. Now, if they have the visa and they don't have a U.S. citizen children, can they come now from India to here?
No, you'd have to quarantine in a third country for 14 days.
So for example, I have a visa to come into United States. Let's say I have a H-1B. Can I go to Sri Lanka, stay there for 20 days, or 15 days actually, and then from there I can fly in right now?
Yes.
So if I have the visa, either B2, F1, H1, or L visa, I can go to Sri Lanka, stay there, and come into United States. If I don't have the visa, I know there is a travel ban, but there is no visa ban. Will I get the visa stamping right now? Even though the consulates are closed once they open, can I get it?
Very unlikely. Although it is a travel ban, not a visa ban, what we've seen with the other country-specific travel bans that have been in place for almost a year now is the consulates were just not issuing the visa. That's their way of preventing entry into the United States. There is a lawsuit pending on that issue because there are many people who would have been eligible to quarantine in a third country if they had the visa, but the consulates are not issuing the visas and are prioritizing other people over these applications, even when they provide evidence that they do plan on quarantining in a third country.
If I'm a U.S. citizen, Emily, and my mom has a visiting visa, can she enter? Because I'm a son, I'm a U.S. citizen. Because I'm about 21, I'm married, my mom can still not come into the United States unless she quarantines, go to Sri Lanka and come into the United States. So please be watchful. The B2 visas also, just because they have a U.S. citizen children, the children have to be unmarried and under 21 to allow them to come into the United States. So if you're, the H1, L1s, all the non-immigrant visas who are traveling from India to here, if they do not have a children who is a U.S. citizen or green card holder, who are under 21 unmarried, they cannot come into the United States right now. How long is this travel ban? It says that they will review it after 30 days.
Unfortunately, it is indefinite, so it will continue until the situation gets better, and then Biden will lift it. But with other travel bans due to COVID, those have been in place, like the Schengen ban, the Brazil, they've been in place for quite some time, almost a year now, and have not been lifted yet.
President Biden is not an anti-immigrant in general. Do you expect anything different from him?
I don't, because this is, this one is not based on race, like many of Trump's issues and being anti-immigrant. This is more of a health-related travel ban. I think it would stand up in court, and I think he will continue it as long as is needed until the COVID situation is under control.
Before Biden came to power, he has definitely said he's going to do more radical things on the COVID, so this was expected from him. It is understandable to an extent, but we will have to see once the COVID passes through in India if they would reverse it. So people who are stuck in India, there are a lot of questions that are arising. How long can they stay on H-1B? We will have a separate session for it. I have written an article saying that if you're an Indian national, if you're sitting in India, there's no restriction for you. You can sit there and work for a US company, and the immigration laws are not applicable on it. But if you have any travel plans you want to go, most probably you will not be able to come back unless you have an exception. What is the national interest exception, Emily, that you, is there a clarification given? I'm important for my company. My company is important for the nation. Can I come?
For most employment-based visas, H-1s and the L-1s, really the only exception besides having a U.S. citizen child or sibling that's under 21 and unmarried is if your work is vital to a critical infrastructure need. It's a very narrow exception. This is not like the exceptions we had previously to the H&L travel ban, where they gave a list of different ways you could qualify for an exception. This is very narrow. Very few people qualify for it. This is the same that's been in place since January with the other country-specific travel bans. And we're just not seeing that many people that meet that criteria of vital support to critical infrastructure.
Emily, good news now. Biometrics are suspended for the H4, L2, and E dependents. What did your law firm do for it? Yeah,
so we were part of the class action lawsuit that was filed by AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, Wasden Banias, as well as our attorney Stephen Brown, all brought that class action lawsuit after we've been dealing with these delays in H4 EAD processing for 2 years now, since March 2019, when the biometrics came into play. So this lawsuit was specifically targeting the biometric policy, not so much the delays, but why did we create this biometric policy in the first place? And as part of the preliminary injunction process, they have decided to do some negotiating on that, and USCIS is planning to suspend the requirement of biometrics beginning on May 17th. So anyone who on May 17th has a pending application but has not received biometrics yet, you won't be required to go for biometrics. And anyone who files after May 17th won't be required to go for biometrics for at least the next 2 years. So that's going to be a big help. It still has a large backlog. We still have a long way to go. The class action is not over. This is just part of the preliminary negotiations going on, because there are still 123,000 I-539s pending in the backlog and 57,000 EAD applications waiting to be adjudicated because of that delay. So those are next on the list of let's attack those, figure out a timeline for when those should be approved by USCIS in order to comply with the court's instructions.
So Emily, if my H4 and L2, or if my H4 and EAD are pending, do you expect, when do you expect my things to be approved now?
We don't have an answer for that, because all we've got right now is they're not going to make you go for biometrics if they don't give you the notice by May 17th. Beyond that, that's the next stage of the class action, is to try to work out a timeline between USCIS and all of these applicants.
Can I expect some result in the next 2 months from the court?
I think so. I think that's where we're working on right now as part of that class action.
Emily, Biden has told that, okay, he's going to do the immigration legislation. We have used such curse words on the Congress, and they are just indolent. They just don't care. what can Biden do? I mean, this is a presidential system of government.
Yeah.
And, in a parliamentary system of government, if the head of the state doesn't get his bill passed, he resigns. Of course, the president doesn't do here in the United States. What do you expect president to do right now?
Obviously, he can't pass legislation on his own, but he has, more than any other president in recent years, made it clear that he does want this passed. He's doing it within the first 100 days. He's got the bill there and telling them, look, if you don't like this bill, at least pass things that you agree on. So I feel like he's in the best position to get something passed. Of course, it's all in the hands of the Senate, really, because we have two bills that already passed the House that are pro-immigration. But yeah, he can't do it on its own. That's where we're stuck.
Problems are persisting in USCIS, Emily. What did Biden do to get it better right now?
Yeah, I think the deference policy, reversing that policy is huge because over the 4 years of the Trump administration, we saw a 60% increase in processing times. By fiscal year 2020, the average processing time for most benefits requests was 10 months for any type of immigration application filed with USCIS. So by implementing the old deference policy, that is going to create a lot more efficiency. We're not going to be asking H-1B applicants who've been on H-1B status for 10 years for proof that they qualify for a specialty occupation, as long as they're filing an extension with the same employer and all of the same facts. That will help a lot. That should also help on these H-4 extensions and L-2 extensions. What is there to look at? They've already been approved once before. We've already determined they're the spouse of an H-1B holder. Now the H-1 is approved. So that should improve things quite a bit. But we still have a mess on our hands because we have customer service. That 1-800 number is practically useless. You can't speak to a live person. When you do, they'll tell you that they'll take down your information and someone will call you back at some time, and then you get the random phone call when you are not ready for it, and then you miss it and you have to start all over again. So he's definitely got his hands full in trying to right the ship, and it does take time, but I do think that he has the right mindset and wants to actually make some improvements with USCIS.
There are a lot of things that they can do, the administration can. They can waive the interviews for the 485 for the employment-based. Recently, the action, because of the class action though, they dropped the biometrics requirement for the H4 and L2s. They can do it permanently and take it off so that the H4s and EADs can be adjudicated at the same time when H1Bs are adjudicated. There are things that can be done. For example, previously we used to have the passport stampings done if you're doing a renewal here in the United States instead of the consulates. All those things can be done to minimize the load in the consulates and also maximize the efficiencies that can happen with the USCIS though. There are things that they can allow a lot of applications to be filed online. As Emily said, customer services can be done in interviews. Some of things should be able to done in when the court system is going, and the parliament system, the cabinet meeting system is happening in Zoom calls. Why not interviews cannot happen in Zoom calls? The consulates can interview people on the Zoom calls. Hey, the biometrics are already done. So there are, in all these Zoom sessions or whatever session you may want to call it as, they can record it to make sure this is the same person who have been interviewed. So a lot of things can be changed in the digital era. We are right now in 21st century. And where are our guys? I mean, they're back in like old age, in the paper documents, in the manual phone, in the manual interviews. Those things need to be changed significantly to improve the process. I hope so. Biden administration is going to work towards it. He has done a lot of changes. There's definitely, I have to appreciate him, but yet there are a lot of things that he can change to maximize the efficiency, minimize and have the less delay. At the same time, focus on the things that they need to. Catch the wrong guys, catch the bad guys. You don't have to use all these fillers to interview the 485 applications for the employment base. Why are you wasting? It's like 260,000 interviews can be avoided officially, and it's going to be so good. If you don't have biometrics, what did you do? In the past 4 years, you had biometrics. 3 years, you have so many biometrics. Did you catch one terrorist? If not, why did you do all these things? So I think so they need to logically think about it and need to change it and practically implement more stricter methods for the wrong people who are trying to do wrong things to our country, and give benefits to the people who are doing better things, and collect more taxes, have people pay more taxes, have them employed and more taxes.
All right, a couple of questions about the biometrics suspension. For people who have already received notice that they've been scheduled for a biometrics appointment between now and May 17th, even if you get the notice and it has you scheduled for after May 17th, you do still need to attend that biometrics appointment. What this class action is doing is suspending the issuance of more appointments going forward, but if you've already been scheduled, you do need to appear for that. The next step in the class action is to get a faster processing time for those that have been pending the longest. We have some people that have already given biometrics and have been waiting 6 months for USCIS to adjudicate those applications. So the applications that have been pending the longest will hopefully be adjudicated first, and then we'll start slowly getting this backlog taken care of. But if you've been scheduled, you still have to appear.
I'm going to club in a lot of questions together that I'm getting on the YouTube and Facebook, and we'll answer them. Is that what is the expected priority date movement in October of 2021? Based on the State Department, Charlie, we are anticipating the priority date movement between me and Emily. There's a lot of disagreement on that. Anywhere between 2016 to all the way to 2019. That is where we are expecting the priority date movement. Don't quote, we may be wrong, but this is our expectation. If anybody is contemplating to move the jobs right now, if your I-140 is approved, if I were you guys, I would not move out of that job. Also, if I were you, be prepared for the 485 in advance though. Don't go all the way to September and prepare at that point of time. Our office is offering a service where we charge a minimum amount of money. We make the entire application ready, and if we are able to file the application before May of 2022, then we'll give that credit for the fees that we charge. You may want to contact your lawyers to see if they will offer those kind of services. A lot of law firms will be willing to do it because that's very good for them. Instead of you going and bombarding them on September, you can make everything ready, and then come October you can file the application, because at least the way that the State Department has indicated, the priority date is expected to move for sure, but to expect where to move. Is it going to be 2016? Is it going to be 2019? There are a lot of judgment calls. I'm not telling that one person is right, one person is wrong, but do prepare for your 485 filing in in October. A lot of the people who came, especially after 2015, they forgot the thought that they can get a green card. The only reason they filed for I-140 previously was only to get the H-1B extension, H-4 EAD. They forgot the purpose of the I-140 is to get the green card. That is also called as permanent resident. You forgot about that, and that's the main thing that we want to remind you, and be prepared to file it. We never expected that the priority date to move all the way to 4 years advance in October of 2020. Believe us, go back. We did not estimate it. We came all the way there. At the conservative estimate, we came all the way to 2013, but not to 2015 January though. So this time we have more number of green cards that will be available on October 1st of 2021. So please be prepared to file for 485 application. If you're interested in joining our, to contact our company, you can drop an email at info@rnlawgroup.com.
Rishi from YouTube has a question about EAD processing times. Are you seeing EAD's approvals for cases filed in October?
Yes, Yes, we have a lot of cases where the EADs have been approved, but did we got all the cases approved for EAD that we filed in October? No, Emily. There are some cases that are still pending that we filed in October. There are some cases that filed in October that still did not receive the biometrics. There are some cases that did not have the EAD in advance approval as of yet. As far as the I-140 though, if it's a downgrade application, I can tell you, Emily, we haven't received a single I-140 approval unless they convert it into premium processing. Only the premium processings are been approved. The straight filing, the filing of the I-140s in the downgrade, none of them were been approved. So and I strongly suggest a lot of people who are have their I-140s to have their premium processing approved, because unless the I-140 is approved, you can't get the green card. A couple of questions on the travel ban. Krishna from YouTube has this question. He has a US citizen born 1 year old. His H1B is stamped. His spouse has a H4 stamp. Can he travel back into this country? Yes, you can. Under the travel ban, you're exempt because you have a US children. You can come into United States. You have the H1B stamped. You have the H4 stamped. You can. I also saw another person saying that the airlines are asking permission from the US consulate to get a letter so that these people can travel into United States though. That should be temporarily only. We are not expecting that to continue. The airlines are caught in the middle of a storm where they have no clarity what to believe, what not to believe. I don't think so in future that's going to be, but for those people who want to travel into United States where they have a US children, I want you guys to take the birth certificate, if possible the original birth certificate, and make sure that you have, you will have your passports and all those things, so that the birth certificate is the most crucial thing. Another thing, what some questions are arising is that, what if the kid is in India? Can we leave the kid and come here? No, I don't think so, because the only reason why they're allowing you is to accompany the kid accompany or to join your kid. So that may not be allowed if you drop your kid there and you're trying to come here. But if your child is in USA, or if your child is traveling with you, yes, you can travel. The issue of the airlines seems to be only temporary. In about 2 or 3 days, things will be fixed on that.
Srikanth from YouTube has a spouse who's waiting for biometrics to be completed and wants to know, how long can I maintain H1B status after the 485 approval so she can work on H4 EAD and travel? 0 days. Once your 485 is approved, you are no longer in H1B status, which means she's no longer in H4 status.
Emily, what about the student visa travel ban? How is it?
So if you're starting a new F1 program that begins on or after August 1st, and you need a visa and need to travel into the United States, and your classes are going to be hybrid or in person, you are exempt from this proclamation and are able to travel into the US without needing to quarantine for 14 days in another country. This is also if you are continuing your F1 studies and your next semester starts on or after August 1st, 2021. It does not allow people who have 100% online classes to obtain the visa or travel into the US.
Kundana has a question. Did Charlie indicated that the EB2 final action dates will advance beyond May 1st of 2011 by September of 2021? Kind of, there is an indication. I couldn't clearly say that he said it, but he definitely indicated that EB2 may advance beyond May 1st of 2011 by September. I would say there is an indication for it.
Shilpa from YouTube is on H1B with an I-94 valid until December and she joined her new employer based on the receipt notice while the transfer's in process. She wants to know what are the options if the transfer gets denied, apart from going back to the old employer. So from the day after the denial, that denial does put you out of status. So unless you are able to go back to the employer to get back in status, your options are somewhat limited. You can try to have the employer refile the H-1B transfer if they think they can overcome the grounds of denial, but at that point they have to request a nunc-pro-tunc application, basically saying, please excuse the fact that this person is out of status. It's due to an unexpected circumstance beyond their control, and put them back in status when you approve this H-1B. The other option is to file an appeal with USCIS. However, that takes several months, probably 6 to 8 months minimum to process, and it does not keep you in status while it's pending. It only puts you back in status if it's ultimately successful. So those are the main options. Litigation is also an option for a denied H-1B.
Vasanthi has this question: are there any exceptions for B2 travel if the immediate relatives need medical help? Can they travel? No, I don't think so. The whole reason why they banned the people is that they perceived that Indians have more COVID according to the numbers, so they don't want that thing to spread here. So I don't think so. If somebody needs a medical help here, the person in India who is not a doctor, licensed doctor in USA, will come and help them. It seems more like, according to me, they're going to harm them rather than help them. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that detail, but that doesn't look to be an exception that they will be allowed to travel.
Eswaran from YouTube has an I-140 that was approved a year ago and is planning to move to a different state to work for the same job, and he wants to know if an I-140 needs to be refiled or amended. Well, it depends on the situation with this new job. Is the new location going to be the work location from now going forward, or is this just a temporary change to where your old location is the ultimate location that you're going to work when you get your green card? If the old location is no longer an option for you to work there, then not just an I-140 amendment is needed, a new perm is needed, because the employer has to test the labor market in the location where your job is going to be at. So new perm and new I-140 is required if the old job location will not exist.
Harsh has this question about the Dropbox appointments right now. Based on the report that I got in the last weekend, the Dropbox appointments are getting cancelled. They received emails saying that the Dropbox appointments are being cancelled. The second question is that when the Dropbox appointments are open, do you need to make an appointment or can you just walk in? You still need to make an appointment, and the schedule has to be available for you to be eligible for going for the Dropbox.
Smita from YouTube had biometrics last month for her green card in the EB1A category and wants to know what is the time frame for getting the green card from the National Benefits Center. If the priority date is current, which it sounds like yours is, we're seeing approvals of the green card for people that filed in August, September, October of 2020 now. Also depends on whether you submitted your medical exam already, whether there's any issues with your birth certificate, if there's going to be any RFE. But assuming that everything was properly submitted and there's no need for an RFE, you've already submitted your medical exam, could be any day now.
Kranti Subramaniam has this question. Kranti from Facebook has this question that his mom is on a visiting visa. He already filed one extension. His her mom's 10-year stamping is expiring in 3 months. Can she still apply for the second extension? Will it going beyond the visa stamping? Is it legal? Absolutely, you can apply for the second extension. Normally, we never used to recommend extensions or second extensions, but this is not normal circumstances. The sky fell down, really, it did. We only heard about the stories. We are not prepared for this pandemic, you can see it. At this point of time, under the conditions, yes, you can file for second extension. Even if the visa stamping is expiring, you can still file for the visa extension.
Prachi from YouTube has an EB2 I-140 approved with a previous employer, priority date in 2013, has an EB2 perm approved with the current employer and getting ready to apply for the EB2 I-140 in premium, and wants to know, should I file the EB3 before September or wait and file it with the 485 in October if eligible? If your employer is willing to do the downgrade, I'd say it's a lot easier to file both the EB2 and the EB3 right now at the same time. You're just creating one extra set of the forms, one extra set of signatures, and submitting 2 petitions. That's a lot easier than getting the EB2 approved and then 3 months from now going back and gathering the documents again, pulling that file out of storage. So if you have the opportunity, it makes sense to go ahead and file both now, especially with that old of a priority date.
Mr. Ayyappan from YouTube has this question. My son turned 14 years after applying for 485. Will he get a biometric call, or do we have to pay the fees for biometric? Would this delay be because of the biometrics? I have seen them sending biometrics even if they didn't paid. But I would do one thing. I would send the biometrics fees only, attach it with the 485 application, send it, try if that works. Also, you can raise the request with the MR to see if they are scheduling for it, or sometimes they may say, hey, pay the biometrics fees, they can say. I've seen both cases where sometimes they're accepting the biometric fees, sometimes they're rejecting the biometric fees. But I've also seen that without biometrics also, without you paying the biometrics also, they have issued the biometric fees. They have issued the biometrics. From your side, go ahead and pay the $85 right now. Go ahead and send it to them.
Harsh from YouTube wants to know, if my final action date becomes current and I've applied for consular processing abroad, what happens if the priority date later retrogresses before the interview is scheduled? The way that they're scheduling the interviews and completing the consular processing now, it's unlikely that that is going to happen, because that's what created this whole idea of the filing date chart versus the final action date chart. The consulate goes through the whole process through the National Visa Center, has you gather the documents, pay the fees, pay the affidavit of support fee if that's necessary. It's a very long process, so they start it very early so that by the time they're ready to schedule the interview, the final action date does actually become current. And by having these filing dates charts, it helps keep the final action date from going back and forth as much. So it's unlikely to happen, but even if it does happen, they can still proceed with the whole process. They just can't actually issue the green card until the priority date becomes current again.
Ritesh Agarwal has this question. Can I do a full freelance job on H-1B get 1099 form? No, you cannot do that thing. One question that came, Emily, that I want discussion with you is, I'm awaiting, Ankit from YouTube asks, I'm awaiting for the change of status for my child from H4 to F1. I'm not sure if it's for child or for him, I forgot it. But will this biometrics decision have any difference right now?
For a change of status to F1?
F1. It was not requested in the class action.
Yeah, F1s are still going to be required to do the biometrics. This is only for H, L, and E dependents.
Yeah.
Rogs from Facebook has an H4 EAD extension pending since mid-December, and the EAD is expiring this month. Had an H-1B in the past, and the employer is ready to file an H-1B and wants to know, should you wait for the H-4 EAD approval or go for the H-1B? At this point, December processing, that's only 5 months. I hate to say that, but your processing time for the H-4 EAD may be longer. And with the H-1B change of status, you have the premium option. I would probably file the change of status to H-1B and premium processing so that I can get it approved, hopefully by the 17th, because I don't think the H-4 and EAD are going to come through that fast.
Rishi Roy has this question. Your views on EB1 I-140 of I-485 EAD filed on October 26. Biometrics have received. Priority date is current. I think so. Your EAD will be rejected. I think so. The reason why your EAD will be rejected is they will approve your adjustment of status, also called as 485, and they will reject your EAD, which is actually good news for you. There's a good chance for it that your 485, since it's current, your biometrics are done, hopefully your medicals are already submitted, you would definitely get the green card for sure. But there's a good chance we are noticing that a lot of EAD denials, because for the EB1 people, they're applying 485s and denying the EADs, which should be a good thing for you.
Vijaya from Facebook has a perm filed and approved in the 6th year of H-1B, and unfortunately the I-140 got denied. Only 20 days left of H-1B time, and wants to know, is it possible for the employer to file a new I-140 and the H-1B 7th year extension together? Unfortunately, no. The employer can refile the I-140. And once it's approved, then you would be eligible to file for a 3-year H-1B extension after that. But because the because the perm was filed in your 6th year, you're not eligible for a 7th year extension. And you're only eligible for the 3-year extension after your I-140 gets approved. You can't file the H-1B extension along with that I-140.
Triveni Ganta from Facebook has this question. Will there be any issue in filing 485 or GC if you have never visited India on H-1B? No, there's no trouble, none whatsoever at all. Same thing happened with me. Me and my wife came on H-1B, I came on H-4, we never went back. We got our 485 file, got the GC, we never went back. Nothing has changed in the past 28 years. It's the same thing.
Venkat from YouTube wants to know, I have the option to file a change of status to F2 in case my 7th year H-1B extension gets denied. How soon can I apply for this change of status to F2 to avoid travel to my home country in the COVID situation? Well, most importantly, you have to file the change of status not only before the H-1 extension gets denied, but also before your current H-1B expires. If your current H-1B has already expired and you have a pending 7th year extension, filing that change of status to F2 is not going to do you a lot of good. So it has to be filed before you reach the end of your current H-1B. You can file it immediately if you meet all of the eligibility requirements for that.
Minkit from YouTube has a very good question. His H-1B is selected in the lottery. Now his question is, he's in India right now. Can the H-1B be processed right now? What will happen? Can he come on October 1st into the United States? The first thing is, your H-1B will be processed. Even though there is a travel ban, you will still get your H-1B adjudicated, no problem whatsoever at all. Now, coming to the point, when will you be able to get the visa stamping and coming to the United States will depend on how long the travel ban is. Right now, we are expecting the travel, if we don't have an end of the travel ban, we only know that travel ban is for indefinite period. Based on the travel ban, what they did it for certain European countries and also for Brazil, we don't know how long it's going to be. Even though the COVID level has been reduced, it's not my opinion, it's the stats that I'm telling. We haven't seen the travel ban taken off though. So at this point of time, we don't know if the travel ban will be taken off by October of 2021. We actually don't have an idea on that. We'll have to wait and see. But your H1 will be processed, will be adjudicated, and will not have any problem. But it's your travel and getting the visa that is in trouble.
Harry Babu from Facebook wants to know, is it advised to extend the H-1B and H-4 and H-4 EAD once I receive the EAD? I'm assuming that's based on the pending green card application. Planning on extending the H-1B, but how important is it to have the H-4 and H-4 EAD extended? Well, if your I-140 has already been approved and there are not any red flags or potential issues with your 485 application being approved, it's a big waste to extend the H4 and the H4 EAD again and again when you have lawful status based on the pending adjustment of status and work authorization based on the green card EAD. You're spending extra filing fees, extra legal fees when it's not really necessary. Now, why would you want to keep extending the H-1B? Perhaps if you have a child who's at risk of aging out and you need to keep them in H4 status long enough till they can get to F1 status, that might be a reason. Or if your I-140 is still pending, or if there's any kind of red flag or issue with the 485 that might cause
What
a
if
denial.
they have intention of only benefiting the immigration lawyers, Emily?
Well, I'll take your money. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say no,
Some people, no matter what you tell them, they want to benefit the immigration lawyers at the cost of themselves. How can you help them? Take the money.
Yeah.
No update with regards to EB2 to EB3 physical therapist, guys. We will post it when it is. We do get this question very frequently on the things, though.
Prasanth from YouTube wants to know, if spouse starts working on the 485 EAD, does that mean the applicant status changes? So it does not mean the main applicant becomes married to the adjustment of status, but if the spouse of the main applicant chooses to use the EAD, it means the spouse is no longer in their non-immigrant status. It does not impact the main applicant status.
Can two doses of vaccinated people travel on a B2 visa? No, that's not an exception at this point of time. One question that came is that my spouse was unemployed on a H4 EAD. Will she has any trouble in filing the adjustment of status of 485? No. H4 EADs, if they don't work, if they are unemployed, absolutely not a problem. If they even claim the unemployment, that still is not a problem for them to get the green card. A couple of other questions are coming with regards to the income tax returns or about filing the 485 application. They are no longer needed to file the 485 application. They were needed in filing the 485 application before. Thanks, we got a good government right now, and they took it off, so we don't need your income tax returns to file the 485 application. Yes, we told all the people in October, November, and December that we needed those income tax returns. That's different time. The times have changed. We don't need your income tax returns to file your 485 application.
Sanjay from YouTube says his I-140 receipt notice that was filed with the downgrade and adjustment of status in October has still not been received by his employer. The attorney has filed a service request and he wants to know if there's anything else to do. Well, you as the applicant aren't able to do anything, but your employer or attorney, if they used their check for the filing fee, the $700 I-140 filing fee, and that check has been cashed, usually the receipt number is on the back of that cashed check, and they can try to do an e-request instead of the USCIS service request by calling the 1-800 number to get the receipt notice. But that's about all that can be done right now.
Can the grandparents travel with a U.S. citizen kid? No, that's not an exception that's available at this point of time, unless they go in quarantine for 15 days in some other country.
Subramaniam wants to know, my family is in the U.S. and I have a valid H-1B visa. Can I still travel into the U.S. even if my family members are not U.S. citizens? Unfortunately, no, there doesn't seem to be an exception for that. It's only if you have a U.S. citizen child or a sibling.
Question, Sanil Sansar from YouTube. The H4 EAD application received at Phoenix Center, still no receipt notice. Yeah, we have noticed that it's taking a longer time, even perhaps about 45 days to get a receipt notice. That's normal nowadays.
BJ Patel wants to know, can I change my H-1B to premium processing? And if I file an H-4 and H-4 EAD, will they all be approved together like before? As of this point, no. They still are separating the H-4 and the H-4 EAD from the H-1B, and they will not process them in premium. That is something that we are pushing for in the class action. It's much more efficient from the government standpoint to approve all the applications at once compared to sending them to different officers, and now the other officer has to send an RFE asking for the H-1B approval notice. We get those types of RFEs all the time. It's just a big waste of time. So we are hopeful that we will go back to the old days of processing them all together when they're done in premium.
A lot of people are asking the question with regards to, can I buy the stocks or cryptocurrencies while I'm on a non-immigrant visa? The answer is yes, you can. With regards to marijuana stocks though, we recommend that you do not buy or trade any marijuana stocks. If you have done it previously, you cannot now go undo it. Are there any problems that we have seen for people who have bought marijuana stock? We have not seen it, but it is our precaution that we are telling going forward, don't do that anymore. Don't buy, don't sell, if you have anything, dispose them off, sell them off, but don't buy any more marijuana stock. Now, I am not giving an advice as a stock advisor or a financial advisor. I am not. I'm just giving as an advisor for the immigration law. A lot of people ask me this question, why is it marijuana illegal? Well, there are different laws though. There is something called state law. There is something called federal law. The governments, there are different kinds of governments, guys. There is called the government. There's only one government. There's called federal government. Like the way in USA, it's a federal government. You have the federal government and you have the state governments. The state government have their own authority to pass some laws according to their own things. So the federal government, marijuana is still illegal. For the state governments, in some state governments, it's legal. So immigration is a federal thing. So that's the reason we want you to stay away from the marijuana. Now, if you look into England, constitution is different, and India constitution is different. When it comes to the USA, the constitution here is quite different than that of India or England. So here the states have their own independence in certain things. The federal government has its own control on certain things. When it comes to the immigration, the federal government controls it. So stay away from marijuana stock. Of course, stay away from marijuana use, stay away from marijuana stock. If you have already done it, my recommendation as an immigration lawyer is sell it out. Don't get involved in that anymore.
Santosh from YouTube says the EB1C I-140 processing time for the Texas Service Center is listed as 10 to 53 months. Does it really take 4 years to get an I-140 approval? And is there any chance of premium processing? We're not typically seeing it take 4 years for an EB1C I-140 approval. Texas Service Center does seem to be the slowest of the service centers across the board for green card type of cases. But typical processing time is more like 1 year, and we're not seeing any premium processing coming anytime soon.
Roshan has this question, are GC holders exempt from travel ban? Yes. GC holder, green card holder, also called as permanent residents, are exempt from the travel ban.
Triveni from Facebook wants to know, will be there any issue for filing the 485 if I've never visited to India on H-1B?
I answered the question.
Oh, sorry.
Can people with Aos Ead Ap travel to India? One thing, if you have a child who is a US citizen, under 21, unmarried, and you have an advance parole, yes, you can go and come back. But if you don't have a US citizen children, you cannot travel on advance parole. You go there, you get stuck there. that's it, your 485 or just AOS is gone. This question is coming on the quarantine issue on the 15 days though. We have noticed that the people who had already existing visas from China and certain other countries where they were involved in ban, they went to Turkey and quarantined for 15 days. They were allowed in the country though. So if the people who already have a visa, they are subject to the ban, they can go and stay in some neutral country for 15 days. Why do I suggest Sri Lanka? Because it's easy to get the visa for the Indian nationals to go there and stay. Yeah, you can go to Sri Lanka, and then when you're coming back from Sri Lanka, don't travel from India, then you're back again. You have to travel from Sri Lanka directly to India. A lot of people ask question, why not Dubai? Well, I heard UAE also has some ban things on it. Before you embark into journey into any country, please make sure that that particular country is also not banning you to enter into their country.
Ravi from YouTube wants to know, what is the process to extend the stay of a B2 visa holder? How soon should it be started? In this case, the I-94 is good until June 7th. The easiest way to file is the online filing through the USCIS.gov website. It takes you step by step through that process, and you pay the filing fee directly there, and you get an instant receipt number confirming that it has been properly filed. You would probably want to start that process no later than May 15th.
Abi and Ravi has these questions with regards to the B2 extension. Can I use COVID as an COVID surge in India to apply for the B2 extension? Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect thing. I don't want my parents to go back to India right now if they're here. Definitely, I don't want them to go back to India. That's definitely a good thing to have them stay in this country because we know what's going on in India. Another question that's coming is, how do we extend the B2? And their B2 is expiring on June 7, 2021. You can apply for the B2. It's recommended to apply within the 45 days, not before, but within the 45 days. We strongly recommend though, if you're doing on yourself the B2 extension application, do it online. Now, why is it easier to do it online? What are the advantages of doing online and disadvantage? If you do online though, if there are two parents, mom and dad, you have to file two separate applications. So the filing fees will go up significantly. That's a disadvantage. What are the advantages? Mostly you cannot do any mistake. Can you pay the wrong fees? No, you can't pay the wrong fees because they won't allow you to take the wrong fees. So a lot of mistakes can be avoided if you do it online. So that's the reason why we recommend filing online applications rather than manual applications though.
Saker from YouTube has an H4 I-94 that expired 8 months ago because the passport was expiring even though the visa is valid. Got the renewed passport and wants to know, is there a risk of going to CBP to get the I-94 extended? Yes, I would recommend that you consult with a qualified immigration attorney as soon as possible to get that rectified. Because it can be an issue to go to CBP when you have an expired I-94.
Mayur has this question, can somebody apply for asylum because of the situation of COVID in India? No. Medical things are not considered to be a asylum. It should be a government persecution. Persecution from the government or the government-related things should be the reason for filing a political asylum. So you cannot apply based on that. Processing times for EB2 to EB3 downgrade I-140 application, Texas Service Center. I-140s, I have not seen any I-140 approved in regular processing. The people who have converted their thing got their things approved in their I-140s approved. even though the downgrade application, the I-140 application processing time was been given there, don't trust it. When it comes to the downgrade application, they take much, much longer than the normal I-140 application. With regards to the EADs and advanced parole, I would say that good number of them got their EADs and advanced parole. About 25% of them that filed in October have still not received their biometrics or H4 and advanced paroles at this point of time.
SK from YouTube applied for the 485 via a downgrade with a previous employer and got the receipt notices, but no biometrics yet. Now he has the new employer, has applied for PERM and got the I-140 approved in EB3 and wants to know what are the options now. Well, if you've continued to maintain your underlying non-immigrant status, such as your H-1B, when the EB3 becomes current, you can file another adjustment of status if you'd like to use that as the basis for your green card process, and instead of going back to the old employer.
Shivang Raju, his wife and child, who is 5-year-old, and a child is born in India, they're stuck in India. Can they have any exemption in them coming into United States? Emily, why don't we discuss about what we discussed in our staff meeting on how the law said what you read on that thing, Emily. They said that if the primary applicant is exempt from the travel, the dependents can accompany. Now, in this case, we looked into what does the accompany means. Can it means that they are coming and joining you? And we looked into the different angle of sources because you're here, the H4 here, can they come in? It looks in the primary reading of the travel ban that your wife and kid cannot come in because they said it's accompanying though. That means that if you were coming with them, then we thought, why would the H-1B will be coming with them? Well, sometimes you might be in the national interest. There are other exceptions that are available there. So at this point of time, in the plain reading of the law, since you are here, the H-4 is there, and you don't have any children who are U.S. citizens or green card holders, we don't see that they're exempt to come into United States. We will see in the coming weeks, we will get more clarifications from the USCIS, the consulate, CBP, and the State Department. If they issue anything, then we would come to a clear indication if they are exempt from it. At this point of time, we don't see that, but any correction we'll see at a later time. We had a big debate about in the morning in that one thing, accompanying, what does accompanying means, and we lawyers have discussed a lot and thoroughly and came to the conclusion that, yeah, according to the plain reading, your wife and your child cannot come at this time when the H-1B applicant is here, since you don't have a U.S. citizen child.
Sneham wants to know, are F1 OPT exempt from the travel ban? We talked about that in our meeting this morning as well. I don't think so, unfortunately, because it specifically says you're coming to the U.S. for a program that starts August 1st or later. For OPT, your program is already over. There's nothing you're coming to start. So unless you qualify under that critical infrastructure exception, I don't think that you would be falling under the F1 exception.
So what will happen to all the people who traveled outside, Emily, who are stuck there?
Yeah, I think they're going to lose their OPT time because you can't get that back later.
Anything else, Emily?
I think we're about out of time for today. Thanks for joining us. If we did not get to your question or if you want to discuss further, you can always join our daily Zoom call to get your questions answered. And you can always set up an appointment for a consultation with myself or Rahul or any of our attorneys by going to rnlawgroup.com.
Thank you very much.